It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you're a die-hard hockey fan who likes to follow the future of the NHL before they blossom into stars, then do we have a show for you. Check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL Draft, with your host Hattie Kalakash, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody. That is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. The dynamic duo has returned just in time for a big-time slate of fantasy news. We got injuries. We got big-time bets. We got one of the hottest teams in the NHL. Are the Carolina Hurricanes for real? Steele and I are going to break it all down for you on Tuesday's episode. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Let's get this money.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for your source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Tuesday edition. I'm back alongside my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. Thank you so much for holding us down over the holidays, everybody. It's been a busy time for, I'm sure, you and Steele and I. We are back. We are back in a big way, and we are here Monday through Friday for all of your fantasy and gambling needs. So make sure you head out there and hit that subscribe button. Drop us a comment, a review, whatever it is. Let us know if you're feeling it or not, because there is a lot to get to today, like every day. And I want to make sure, Steele, that we are feeding everyone that fire. Today, we got the St. Louis Blues, 2 big-time injuries. We're going to get to big-time bets, but I also think we need to start talking a little bit more about these Carolina Hurricanes on an impressive heater right now. Are they for real? Is the Stanley Cup theirs to lose? We're going to break that down. Fantasy implications. We got Max Pacioretty's return around the corner as well. I'm fired up. I've been away a couple of days, Steele. Like I said, couldn't do it without you, my friend. But the St. Louis Blues are in a very interesting situation. You and I have talked a lot about the Robert Thomases, Jordan Kyrous of the world. Let's take a look at 2 of their biggest trade chips. They're looked to be sellers. Tarasenko goes down. I believe that's a hand injury. Ryan O'Reilly, broken foot, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this, Steele, because say what you will about the overall success about these St. Louis Blues. This was going to have implications for your fantasy team because these guys headed to new scenery, could be huge. What do you take away from this? What do you see happening with these 2 players who should be back by the deadline? Does this impact their value?
Yeah, I think it does impact their value, especially more Ryan O'Reilly, because his name has been the one circling the trade deadline as well, more than Tarasenko. I think it's more that right. Tarasenko won't re-sign with the Blues in the offseason after his contract is over. We also can't forget Torrey Krug is on the IR as well for the next 6 weeks. So for me, I'm looking at this St. Louis team. Tarasenko out for 4. O'Reilly and Krug out for 6 weeks on the IR. I'm looking at the St. Louis Blues team right now, and I don't think they make the postseason. This team is, again, we've talked about the roller coaster of a season they've already been on. 7-game losing streak, 8-game winning streak, and then back to a 5-game losing streak. Jordan Binnington's been awful. Well, a 896 save percentage and a 316 goals against average, 13-12-3 record on the season. Thomas Greiss has come in as a backup. He's been okay, not good enough either as a backup. So this Blues team is all banged up and bruised. Again, a roller coaster of a season. You're putting all the pressure on Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou to really facilitate the offense now. And they've done that. But again,
yes, they have.
A big part of their success is playing with Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, more Tarasenko. But nonetheless, I'm really scared for the St. Louis Blues team. They're not going to make the postseason. You look at the standings right now. The Nashville Predators, a point back from them, 2 games in hand. I think the Nashville Predators are going to have a great second half season. Who knows potentially what happens with the Thatcher Demko comes back from the Vancouver Canucks.
There you go.
If he can get back and play the way that we know he can, Vancouver Canucks can make a little bit of a push as well and jump ahead of the St. Louis Blues. So this Blues team for me is, they're done at this point for me.
This is just really, really bad timing for both of these injuries to happen for this team in a multiple of ways. Because if you were looking at this from the St. Louis Blues fan, maybe they still had a shot there, nipping around in that Central Division, 37 points. Maybe you're a wild card team. Not only if that doesn't work out for the overall success, now if you were going to be sellers, your two biggest pieces, arguably, getting hit with injuries, this now makes the GM in St. Louis dealing from a position of disadvantage. Doug Armstrong, hats off to you if you can get some stuff done here ahead of the deadline. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise and they come back a little faster than expected. Yeah. They go on a heater. Let's see what happens, Steele. But the St. Louis Blues, this is just a tough blow for sure. Yeah. What's interesting, though, enough, you mentioned Jordan Kyrou. Kyrou's on fire. And look at what happens to the timing of these two injuries, Steele. They're about to head out on a very tough 4-game road trip. This could very well sink this team, these two injuries. You mentioned Binnington. It's just been a bit of a tough season for the St. Louis Blues to watch in general.
Yeah, it has been. And, even with, I was looking at Jordan Kyrou's stats, or actually the St. Louis Blues stats in general. And they are awful for plus minus. Kyrou is minus 18. Thomas is minus 15. Tarasenko and O'Reilly are minus 20 as well. The team has been bad. And, speaking of all these injuries as well, those injuries have really affected my fantasy team. I've got Tarasenko. I have Krug. They're on the IR. I also have Trevor Moore and Chris Letang on the IR. Tristan Jarry goes down in that Winter Classic against the Boston Bruins. He's day-to-day as well. So I lost my last week matchup because of all these injuries that have racked up for me. And it's been a little bit of tough trying to find those guys off the waiver wire that you and I try to target every Monday.
And still, as much as Ryan O'Reilly may be having a bit of his struggles this year, still both valuable fantasy pieces. 10 goals for O'Reilly this season. Tarasenko, 10 goals, 19 assists for almost 30 points in 34 games. There are going to be teams still sniffing around at both of these players. So if you are a fantasy GM who owns them and you have an IR spot, throw them on the IR, keep them and find out what happens to what team they maybe get traded to. If you have one. If you don't, you're going to have to get spicy. Let us know what you're dealing with. Hit us in the comments. Hit us in the DMs. Let us know. Steele and I are here to get your back. We always appreciate all of these fantasy comments and takes. There's a lot more coming on today's episode, people, and I'm excited to get to big-time bets. I've been away. I've been in the freezer a little bit. Some of these picks are starting to pick up steam. I'm starting to thaw out a little bit here, and I'm excited to talk about these Carolina Hurricanes as well right around the break, Steele. But bottom line, the Blues are a team to keep your eye on because some of these fantasy pieces who right now injured or unperforming or otherwise, in a couple of weeks come a big-time trade, could be a whole different ball game for where you got to be placing some of these bets. That's with our friends from betonline.net because betonline.net, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season and every season. Get the latest odds and trends just like Steele and I do every single night for our NHL boards and every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, which is about to wrap up, basketball, everything. They have you covered at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, hopefully just like you love this one, you can find even more of those at BetOnline as well, where they're always the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts.
If you're a die-hard hockey fan who likes to follow the future of the NHL before they blossom into stars, then do we have a show for you. Check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL Draft, with your host Hattie Kalakash, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your next listen, though, go check out the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast. your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading all the way up to the NHL draft this summer, plus NHL draft rankings and top prospect comparisons for every single team in the NHL. Locked On NHL Prospects, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. And once again, please hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and all the support you show us every single day. Thank you so much. We're going to get to big time bets at the end of the episode. But the big question that Flip has, Carolina Hurricanes, and I'll throw it over to you to start us off with this conversation.
I appreciate that because, look, as much as we come on here and I try to be very honest with our takes, Steele, both ways. When we're right, we're right. And when we're wrong, we're wrong. I had a lot of good things to say about this Carolina Hurricanes team. And I think other than the New York Rangers, in both of our opinions, heading into this season at least, I don't know where your head's at now. Maybe we can break that down during this segment as well. Those were the two teams, in my opinion, that had the East in their pocket. Now, Boston Bruins in that conversation. Toronto Maple Leafs for sure in that conversation. Why not the New Jersey Devils? A little bit bold, but Carolina has proven that this team is for real once again. And say what you want to say. I'm not even going to talk about Kochetkov right now because it's been Antti getting the run out over the last week or so. And I'm going to ask you about that. That's right here at the top of my notes. But this team, Steele, right now, in my opinion, Stanley Cup is theirs to lose. And people are going to go, Flip, there's so much hockey left. That's a little bit of a bold take. And it is, because when you look at the rest of the league, there are a lot of good teams going on right now. And I'll say this, don't sleep on some of these Western Conference dark horses, Dallas, Vegas, even Winnipeg, Minnesota. There are some teams creeping out there, and it's not even close to being done. But right now, Carolina Hurricanes, it's their cup to lose, and I'm going to ream off a couple of numbers, Steele, before I let you have yours here. Hurricanes, first in shots against. They allowed the least shots against of any team in the league. They are the sixth least penalized team. They're disciplined. They get it done in the faceoff dot. They are the seventh best team in the faceoff dot. Second in shots on net per game, and the eighth best penalty kill. If you're trying to build a Stanley Cup winner, get it done on special teams. Get it done in the dot. Don't allow shots and make sure you capitalize on yours. 56 points right now, Steele, only bettered by the Boston Bruins. This is this Carolina Hurricanes team. Cup to lose right now, in my opinion.
For me, the obvious answer here, it's the Colorado Avalanche's cup to lose because they're the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Okay. But that's a little bit of a cop-out. So take the Avalanche out of the equation here. And for me, I'm actually going with the Boston Bruins, that this is their cup to lose this season. Yeah. And I got a couple of numbers here as well. Boston Bruins, first in goals for this season, also first in goals against this season as well. So being the top defensive team and top offensive team in the league is very impressive. Linus Ullmark doing incredible things this season. Carolina is actually the 18th team in the league in goals for.
Their one weakness.
But no matter what, they're the second best team in goals against, right tied there with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So even though they're not scoring as many goals, all these games that they're playing are low-scoring games under the number that you and I love to do, under the numbers when we can. That's the thing. So the Carolina Hurricanes are right there beside the Bruins, but for me, without the Avalanche and Hurricanes, it's the Boston Bruins that it's their year to lose the cup. And just looking at their lineup right now, Bergeron, 37, Krejci, 36, Marchand, 34, Smith, 33, Foligno, 35, a couple of older guys that have been a part of this, especially Bergeron, Krejci, and Marchand, who have been a part of this organization for pretty much their entire career. And then, the Carolina Hurricanes have some older vet guys on the team. Brent Burns, 37, Jordan Staal, 34. Now Max Pacioretty, when he makes his debut in the next week or so, he's also 34 years old. But those pieces have been added, besides Jordan Staal, those pieces have been added throughout the last year. And they're really facilitating those pieces around those young guns that they have. Svechnikov, Aho, Nakash, Kokniemi, all these.
Forget about my boy
Seth Jarvis, Kochetkov, all these young guys that they have throughout their lineup. They're, adding the right pieces around them, but haven't been a part of the organization. So this Carolina Hurricanes team is going to be good for many years. Who knows how long we have for the Boston Bruins at the top of the league right now. So for me, again, Boston Bruins this is the year for the Boston Bruins to win the cup.
And it pains me because, hey, speaking of what I just alluded to earlier, you and I were wrong on that one. Full up and down pause. We were wrong on the Boston Bruins this season. And hey, they have been better than I think a lot of people could have expected.
Yeah.
Did we say they were going to miss the playoffs? And we were obviously not on the mark with that. True. But if you were one of these cats out here saying that they were going to pace the league right now with 62 points and Linus Ullmark was going to be the Vezina candidate with only one loss, I'm not here for any of that madness. But very quickly, Carolina doesn't have Pacioretty there right now, and I think that's going to be a nice steadying veteran presence in the mix with, like you said, some of these young guns. So let's see what happens for their offense, because that's the one chink in this team's armor. They are so stingy defensively that sometimes they almost overcommit to the defensive side of the puck and forget to shoot that puck. They shoot the puck more than any team in the league. That's when I'm like, what is going on? They're going to get there offensively, I think, especially when Pacioretty returns. That's a little fantasy tidbit for y'all cats out there. Hope you have him on that watch list. But very quickly, Steele, I can't move on from the Carolina Hurricanes. 2 big-time bets until we talk about this goaltending situation. And I'm not even focused on Kochetkov right now. I'm focused on Antti Raanta, and I think what we've seen over the last week and a half is this Carolina front office giving Antti Raanta a little bit of a show-off here, a showcase, to see if some of these teams, hey, would they deal him in division to a team like the Rangers who need a backup? I don't know. But a team out there looking to go on a little run with a little bit of goaltender insurance, why not take a risk on Antti Raanta? I know the money might be an issue, but what do you think on them showcasing him lately? Because he has looked good. Oh, wait. Let me pull up these numbers right now. 10-2-2 this season. 2-6-2 goals against. That's a backup goaltender that I think a lot of teams would take a shot on. I don't know what you think about that, Take.
Yeah, I think they're definitely showcasing his skill set right now. This is a guy that I even last year in the first round of the playoffs, I was like, this guy's good enough to win them at least the first round until Frederik Andersen comes back from injury. Yep. You know, it's definitely, I don't think we expected Andersen to be out for this long.
No.
And, you know, Kochetkov taking off, Antti Raanta getting the 5 starts in a row, and he's he's on a 5-game win streak as well.
Yes,
I think they're definitely showing his skill set off, maybe for a potential trade before the deadline. At the same time, this just proves again at how great the goalie depth is for the Carolina Hurricanes come playoff time. They have 3 goalies they can rely on, even if they go down to injuries, which we've seen happen in the past. So they have great veteran experience in Andersen and Antti Raanta. They have a great young rookie in Kochetkov. If he has to get into the cage, we know that he's more than capable, even though, again, he is a rookie in the league right now. This Hurricanes team, again, right there with the Boston Bruins. I love the fact that Max Pacioretty is going to be back soon in the next week. I actually just picked him up in one of my fantasy leagues, waiting for his return.
Love it.
Even at 34 years old, he brings a ton of value. But you're right. You know, maybe the Hurricanes, you know, Andersen and Antti Raanta are at the last year of their contract, I believe. So we know that they're not going to be re-signing at least one of them because of Kochetkov now. They're probably showcasing his skill set to make a trade before the deadline, but who knows? If they don't make the trade, they have him in the barrel and they can use him at any time when they want.
11-game heater for the Carolina Hurricanes also puts them into, you know, it's easy for, hey, Flip, easy to come out here and say it's their cup to lose when they're on an 11-game heater. Let me just remind you that I said this back in March last season. I said it in the offseason, and I'm going to continue to say it. Go out there and give yourself a little sprinkle on this Carolina Hurricanes team, because they are a force to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference, and we're going to get to big-time bets. But how about a little tasty matchup tonight, Steele, between these Carolina Hurricanes and New York Rangers? This could be a playoff preview. We're going to get to that. It's good to be back in the booth with you, my friend, and thank y'all for being here.
Yeah, you know, that's definitely a matchup I was looking at a little bit, but stayed away from. You know, the under was a little enticing, under 5.5, but you never know, like, too bold, especially between some top teams in the Metropolitan Division. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So make sure you go hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate all the love and all the support. Like Flip said, leave some comments on the YouTube video. DM us on our Twitter account, LO_FantasyNHL. Thank you so much. We love connecting with all of our listeners out there. But let's get over to big time bets, where the money is made, Flip. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just start us off right now
Please.
with a very, very, very typical Steele Roden bet.
Here we go.
Puck line guru coming
Here
out
he is.
live Tuesday night. I'm taking
Bang.
the Maple Leafs on the puck line against these St. Louis Blues.
Oh my
we
goodness.
just talked about it. They're riddled with injuries. Jordan Binnington is just not a great goalie this year again. I know they won it. They won in overtime 5-4 last week, but they also had Tarasenko and O'Reilly in that game as well. So without them, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Leafs back at home, I believe. I'm taking the Maple Leafs puck line. First pick of the night.
Yeah, that's where my head went right away. And that's kind of the angle to take here after they lose two pivotal stars. I don't know, I think I explained it to you the last time. When the Blues and Leafs play, it's always a close game, and I'm a little bit apprehensive. So this is just one that I'm going to just enjoy. I would lean the over here, if anything. I see where you're coming from. Not going to chirp it. I'm not betting against it or anything. This is just one of those ones that I'm staying away from just because of my past getting burned in these situations. Now, if you don't mind, I'll stay at the very same spot because what I saw from Austin Matthews the other night against the Colorado Avalanche, this player, say what you will about his season so far, 18 goals, 24 assists for 42 points in 37 games, still a great season.
Yeah.
Is it what we saw from him last year? No. He is far off that 60-goal pace, but that's because we haven't seen him go on one of those little mini runs that he went on basically every other week last season. And I think that 1 goal, 1 assist performance against the Colorado Avalanche is going to kickstart a little mini heater here for Austin Matthews. So, in this good situation against Jordan Binnington, who's given up a lot of muffins this season, give me Austin Matthews, anytime goal. I love this spot for number 34. He's going to go on a big-time point streak, and it's going to start or continue, I say, tonight against these Blues. Matthews, anytime goal, keeping it going.
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of those players that are going to really turn on the Jets in the second half of this season. Which,
Me too.
We're going to get to later this week with some bounce-back players for the second half of the season as well. But my second pick of the night, I'm taking the Islanders on the money line, -110 against these Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks, again, just seems a lot of turmoil and just no chemistry and connection between the lines right now. The goalie tandem in net right now, Delia and Spencer Martin, just not good. JT Miller looks just very frustrated out there. Yeah, he's a ghost out there, not really producing, but he looks frustrated with his teammates. A couple of the other day in that game when he's slamming his stick at the net, trying to get Delia to the bench over there. He just seems frustrated. Islanders on the money line is the easy pick for me, -110. But my lock of the night,
hit me.
Predators and Canadiens over 6 goals, -115. The lock of the night. The Canadiens have been bruised and bullied the last 2 games. 7-2 and 9-2 losses against the Washington Capitals. And, for me, Philip Forsberg is one of those guys that I really think is going to have a turning point this season. I think we saw that this past weekend. The Predators won. The Predators got 3 out of 4 points on a 2-game road trip. I think they played well. Forsberg 6 points in 2 games, 7 points in his last 3 games, actually. But I like where they're headed. I think they really needed that game against the Anaheim Ducks, a 6-1 win, and we can really start to see the offense take forward with these Predators. So over 6 goals, -115 is the lock of the night.
We also know this Nashville team is notorious for going on a second half heater. And I'm saying heater all over the place, Steele, but that's because that's what happens at this time of season. And that's what carries teams into the postseason, whether it's a player going on one, whether it's the team overall. And the Nashville Predators are a notorious slow starting, hot second half team. So I'm with you on that. Very quickly before I get to my lock of the night, which I think you're going to like because I've talked a lot about this player and I'm going back to another player prop. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 0-7 in their last 7 games on the road. They have lost 10 straight against Eastern Conference opponents, and they are 1-7 in their last 8 games overall. I understand that they've had some recent success in their last 10 against the Ottawa Senators, but these are 2 very, very different teams in terms of those recent matchups.
Yeah.
The Columbus Blue Jackets are just a mess, and I'm going to continue to fade them down the stretch all second half long. Ottawa on the money line wasn't worth anything at all, Steele. I didn't even want to go there. So I'm going to tell you about my lock in 1 second because it's Tim Stützle, and I'll explain it in 1 second. I forgot about my second pick. Stars on the money line against the LA Kings. Phoenix Copley, impressive. I know you mentioned him on the waiver wire ad. He's had a great little run here.
Oh, yeah.
The Dallas Stars might be my favorite dark horse pick for the Cup this year. My favorite in terms of the odds, what they've got going on up and down the ice. 4-game win streak, 7-2-1 in their last 10. I know I'm getting off my Stützle angle, but give me the Stars on the money line. Minus 120 on the road against the Kings tonight. That's my second pick. Now, Tim Stützle, back to the Senators. No value in them on the money line, although I do think they absolutely smash. So I might go Steele Spesh puck line. Tim Stützle, 2-goal game his last time out. I said he's got 80-point potential. He's going to basically have to be a point-per-game player to get there this year. So I may have been overreaching so far. So good for you for saying that. 14 goals, 19 assists so far this season, though. He is another player who keep your eye on. He is going to get hot. He's going to get hot in another big way against this bad Columbus Blue Jackets team. Tim Stützle, anytime goal, lock of the night.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, he's been phenomenal for my fantasy hockey team this year. So I'm really glad I picked him up in the later stages of the draft. Speaking of those Columbus Blue Jackets on yesterday's episode, I was looking at a couple of those lower tier teams who could potentially land that number 1 overall pick. And what would you think of Connor Bedard playing center for Patrick Laine and Johnny Gaudreau on that top line? We talked about the Columbus Blue Jackets needing a top tier centerman to play with those guys. I think Connor Bedard would fit right in with the Columbus Blue Jackets and Patrick Laine and Johnny Gaudreau. That would be a very deadly line in my opinion.
Spicy.
Very spicy, very spicy. But who knows? That's still 5 months away. Who knows who's getting
We'll get there. We'll get there.
That's, maybe we'll get the NHL prospects, see what happens in the future. Podcast, get them going on in the future. But yeah, 5 months away. Nonetheless, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Again, check out those Locked On NHL Prospects podcasts, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL draft, plus NHL draft rankings and top prospect comparisons for every single team in the NHL. Locked On NHL Prospects podcast, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
If you're a die-hard hockey fan who likes to follow the future of the NHL before they blossom into stars, then do we have a show for you. Check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL Draft, with your host Hattie Kalakash, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.